Forcing children to play with kids who don't have friends is one of the biggest scams ever made by parenting of all time. And I don't say this as a child with many friends who is supposed to play with loners. I say this because I was the loner. Some of my earliest and fondest memories is of me anxiously waiting on the side of the playground, waiting for someone to grab me by the hand and lead me away. Now, in hindsight, I'm really glad that that someone was not a stranger claiming that they had candy in their van, but I would have gone with anyone at that point. However, no one chose me. So I did what I do best. I faked it till I made it. I would fluff out my hair, I would straighten out my uniform on the school playground, I'd even shine my shoes with spit, and I would strut past the slides and the monkey bars until I found my target. One of the earliest assumptions I have ever made as a child was that if you could make someone laugh, they are automatically your friend, it is contract bound. So I went up to the most popular girl in my grade, and I tapped her on the shoulder and I spoke to her. Now, you might have thought that I would have made a simple knock-knock joke or a pun. Instead, I told her this very long, nerdy, laborious joke that was not funny at all. I did not make her my friend that day. However, I did get a reaction out of her, and it was not really a smile or a laugh, it was more of an action. Right across my face. However, I did not take this with embarrassment. I took it as a sign that I needed to refine my craft. So, after school that day, I went to the Dollar Tree like your average American teenager, and instead of buying an Airhead or a magazine, I bought this. Just Joking Too by National Geographic. Filled with hundreds of jokes, I read this book front to back. I began the art of plagiarism by stealing jokes from this book without giving any credit at all and telling it to any person in my school who would listen. Did I make a single friend by using this? No. Did it help me at all? No. Was it funny? No. Now, did it make people want to rip this book apart at the seams? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you can tell by the tape on this book that it was more than just a want. Did that stop me? No. In fact, it made me more annoying. From the Association of Applied and Therapeutic Humor, and according to Charlene Bainham and her researchers and colleagues at the University of Tennessee, they found that children by the age of 5 laugh about 7.7 times per hour during playtime. And yet, not a single one of those times were for my jokes. That is how unfunny I was. However, it's important to note, and it's important to talk about, because it helps me describe why I find humor so important to me and so important to the way that we communicate. But in order to answer this, we need to go to the next part of my childhood. Fast forward a few years, and now one event has caught my eye: the elementary school talent show. For some context, me and my sister used to do taekwondo at the age of 3. And every year, my sister would perform in the elementary school talent show and would perform a taekwondo performance to show off her capabilities and her technique. This one really cool move she was able to do was using two nunchucks and swing it around her hips and her back and her legs without hurting herself or causing a bruise. And she would do it really fast, so all you could see was a blur. Now, I would have loved to bring nunchucks for you today and demonstrate it, but if I knew how to do that, I would not be here standing to you today, talking to you about why I find humor and stand-up comedy so important. So every year, my parents and I would go and see her. And one year, my dad tells me one statement that would still shift my entire perspective and change the way that I would live forever. He said, "You know, Noor, one day, you're going to get up on that stage and you're going to perform taekwondo just like your sister." And it was a harmless statement. He was trying to excite me. But I took that very differently. Just like my sister? Just like somebody else? The idea of following a pattern shook me to my core. The idea of following a pre-made mold set for me, that was the nightmare. So, one more year goes by, and I still am terrible at nunchucks. I spent hours and hours in private lessons, and the only thing I knew how to do was give myself a bruise. So I remember the night before the talent show auditions, I told my dad, I don't want to do taekwondo. I want to do something different. And he asked me, what would you want to do? Do you want to sing? Do you want to dance? What do you want to do? And I told him that I wanted to make people laugh. And he kind of got confused, and he said, do you want to dress up like a clown? And I told him, no, not like that, not like a circus person. But I didn't know really what exactly yet, but I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And he wished me luck, and he set me on my way. And this moment would change my entire life afterwards, because I raced to my old family computer and I searched up one website to ask questions, YouTube. And I searched up many questions, such as how to be funny, or what makes things funny. And you might have thought that at this point I would have realized I was not inherently funny because I needed to ask those questions. Yet, I thought that I had some potential. After hours of watching boring people talk about weird jokes or try to make puns that weren't really funny at all, I found one video that caught my eye. And this would change my entire perspective on humor and stand-up comedy. This one video was called Seinfeld, Dogs Are the Leaders of the Planet. This video, this 26-second video, was a simple idea, and it was about how if aliens were to observe us from Earth, they would think that dogs are the rulers of the planet because we pick up after them. It was a very basic idea. It took maybe 3 to 4 sentences to develop it. And yet, I was so engaged. I was drawn into it. And the audience in the background was laughing as well. They were drawn in as well. And it made me question so many things. How can something be so simple, be so funny? And how can it connect all of us together by laughing? And at this moment, I knew. 5 hours later, and hundreds of Seinfeld and also now Kevin Hart videos later, I realized that that is what I wanted to do. The one thought occurring in my head was that I wanted to be like that. I wanted to make people laugh like that. I wanted to joke around like that. I wanted to be easygoing like that. So I made a Word document, I put a few jokes on there, practiced it a few times, and then went to sleep for the next day, the talent show auditions. And I remember the very first audition that I had, and it was with 3 teacher judges. And I know they didn't mean to, but they looked terrifying at the time. But I remember the very first time I made them laugh. It was a very sarcastic joke about how my school didn't really teach me how to make friends, and it was a very sarcastic joke about state capitals not converting into a way to make a friend or to talk to a teacher. But I remember the sparkle in their eyes after I finished a punchline. And I remember that feeling in my chest. It was so addicting. According to the Mental Health Foundation, by helping others and producing laughter, it makes us feel less anxious and makes us feel more comfortable in our skin. By making those teachers laugh, I felt less alone. And I felt like for once in my life, I didn't have to be alone for the rest of my life. And then my performance came and went, and this specific talent show performance began the 9-year journey that I had in stand-up comedy. Hundreds of performances and banquets and charities and showcases later, I began to improve. I refined my craft bit by bit. I became a little bit funnier each time. Now, I can go on a very long tangent to you about how stand-up comedy is, how it made me sweat a little less, how it made me better at public speaking, and how I felt less nervous, and it's so important to learn about public speaking. But as I said before, that's not what I'm here to talk to you about. I'm here to talk to you about the before and the after, not the middle. Before, I was a child with barely any friends and was painfully unfunny. But as a teenager, I have, a few more friends, but still painfully unfunny. However, stand-up comedy allowed me to grow. It allowed me to grow up. It allowed me to move on from my childhood and my past, and it made me be open to a community that I didn't think I could be open to before. According to Mayo Clinic, humor and laughter can help us cope with difficult situations and can help us open more opportunities for ourselves. For stand-up comedy, it made me feel more comfortable in my skin, and it made me feel embarrassment in a healthy way. And most importantly, it made me feel a little less pain when things went wrong in my life. And I met some of the best people in my life by being able to produce laughter or using stand-up comedy. In fact, some of the best friends I've ever made is because I went on stage one time and said a joke to them, and they laughed and they thought I was funny and they wanted to be friends. And most importantly, it opened so many opportunities for me. It opened so many paths, and I created my own pattern. I created my mold, my legacy. Especially, I was able to open opportunities that were not open to me before. In fact, in 2022, I was nominated as Changemaker of the Week by Learn with Leaders. And this is a very great example about how I was offered an opportunity or role or a chance to be a part of a community. In short, if I want to leave you with something, it's this. Please do not take humor for granted. I know in our very busy lives, I know with work and school and friends, we sometimes push aside the importance of humor and we sometimes don't take it seriously. But I urge you to take it seriously. It's important to have it in your life. In fact, I would say that it's crucial. According to the Very Well Mind Foundation, humor helps us boost our heart health and our immunity. In fact, I can't even imagine the number of heart attacks we could avoid if we just said a few knock-knock jokes here and there, ladies and gentlemen. I'm telling you, it is important. It's so important for our minds and our hearts and our bodies to have humor in our lives. It opens us to so many different doors. It leads us to new paths. And most importantly, don't just follow the pattern because you feel like you're obligated to. Don't follow a pre-mold because that's what people are telling you to do or feel like you have to do it. And I'm telling you this, if I did not decide to break the pattern, I would be just like my sister. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it just would not be me. And I didn't realize the number of events and laughters I produced all happened because one day I decided I didn't want to be alone on a playground. Let's just say that being lonely and being anxious about being lonely saved me from being lonely for the rest of my life. And being alone and not having a teacher or a parent forced me to hang out with other friends or children that I didn't really know on a 20-year-old sandy, rusty playground actually was one of the best things that could have ever happened to me. Thank you.